Hey, how are you?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Peter Lambert. I'm the very proud principal here at C.K. McClatchy High School, and it's our pleasure to welcome you this evening to our City Council debates. And before we get started, I'd just like to give a few thank yous. We have some students that are here with us tonight that are doing all of our audio-visual, and our visual and performing arts teacher, Miss Molly Morrison. So if we can give a hand to the students that are giving us a hand this evening. And also I'd like to thank you for coming out this evening and for being here at McClatchy High School and participating in this electoral process. It's very important that we're all involved and participating. And I see many students out in the crowd as well. And so I'd just like to say thank you for setting the example for the students that are here and for participating this evening. And again, welcome to C.K. McClatchy High School. And it's my pleasure to introduce you Mitch Rohr.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mitch Rohr. I'm the president of the Land Park Community Association. And impressed at the turnout tonight. This is really fantastic. Just a few words about the Land Park Community Association. Our goal is to preserve and protect William Land Park, raise community awareness, work with elected officials and city staff on behalf of the community and the city at large, host events to bring the community together, such as tonight, and of course we are welcoming new members. I'd like to have a special thanks to Principal Lambert for help bringing us together tonight and providing this wonderful facility. Again, the VAPA. Channel 13, CBS. We'd also like to thank Rayleigh's for all the fine food that they provided us over the years. Continuing to be a wonderful partner in our neighborhood, and we're looking forward to their new facility. And last but not least, the Land Park Community Association Board and the committee that put this event on tonight. We're a volunteer organization. We're all very passionate about our community and our city. And without the tireless work of all of the folks, especially our Vice President, Joseph Zeta, we would not be here tonight. So I thank you, Joe, and everyone, Chris, and all who put this on, and Paul and Art. And then I'd like to remind you to silence your phones. And we'll go ahead and introduce Steve Larch. He's going to be our moderator this evening. Steve is an anchor reporter at CBS Channel 13. He's been with the station for 13 years and has reported on coverage of citywide issues during that time, including extensive coverage of downtown development and the homeless crisis. And last, we're going to make a contribution of $150 tonight to the VAPA organization to help further their programming. With that, let's begin.
All right, thank you, Mitch. I just got my ballot in the mail today. I'm sure a lot of you guys did as well, so it's top of mind for all of us. Election coming up faster than any of us anticipated, I think, right? Great turnout here, great auditorium. I'm going to set some rules here and let you guys know what they are before we get started. First off, thanks to the Land Park Community Association for sponsoring this event. Thank you to McClatchy High for offering this venue. You guys know Steve Hansen, City Council member, District 4, serving the past 8 years. Putting down trails for challenges in the California Environmental Justice Alliance. So here's some rules, then we're going to get started. First, each candidate will get 3 minutes to make an opening statement. We have a series of questions Lampard Community Association. Candidates will have a minute and a half to respond to each of these questions, and then a minute if they choose a rebuttal. The League of Women Voters has volunteered their time to time this all out for us. We appreciate that. And we'll end this with a 2-minute statement from each candidate as well. So I know that you guys, there's a lot of support for each candidate here. I want to remind everybody we want to be on our best behavior. We also want to limit that show of support till the very end so we can get through quite a number of questions, frankly. So please be respectful. As Mitch already mentioned, please silence your cell phones if you haven't already done that. We did flip a coin or a key just moments ago to determine who would go first. And so with the opening statements, Steve goes first.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, all of you, for being here tonight. First, let's say go Lions. Can we give a shout out to the Lions? There has been so much happening in our city, but especially in District 4. We've gone through and are still going through this metamorphosis as a city. When I was first running, we were in the midst of the recession, and we were losing jobs, we were losing businesses, we were losing a lot of young people who were going to other places because they didn't see themselves in the city. Over the past 7 years, it has been one of my greatest honors to serve on the City Council. It has indeed been one of the greatest challenges, too, as we've worked through not only climbing out of the recession, rebuilding our city's departments after layoffs and closures of fire stations and park workers, but also as we're trying to get ahead of some of the true liabilities that we face. Sacramento is a city that has continued to be attractive to people from out of town, but it's also a city that has a lot of challenges still, not only in homelessness and housing. We're leading on those things for cities of our size, but we have to confront them even more strongly. In the last 7 years, we've invested so much into the arts, into transportation. Just this last year, we invested in free public transit for our youth. And we've seen a 100% increase from last January to this January in youth ridership. We've issued arts grants, focused on equity. We have done things like the Sophia and the Clara and the Verge Center for the Arts. The Powerhouse Science Center is underway. Those are all things that I've been able to champion, but small things too, like bike lanes, Freeport Boulevard here. We added not only new art at Plaza Cervantes, but we made the streets safer for the students coming to school because that was what they wanted. Everything in the city that is of consequence almost always runs through District 4. This is the busiest district. We have 100,000 people that come into work every day. We have visitors. We have so many different things going on that make it special and unique, but also make it very difficult. I work hard every day. I think a lot of you know that we do our best. I've got an amazing team. And it's my commitment to you that we're going to work harder. We're going to keep doing as much as we can to stay ahead of these challenges, to stay ahead of our opportunities. But I believe that our work is not done. I want you to help me continue to make Sacramento a place that works together, that believes in each other, a city of neighborhoods where we are neighborly. In this national conversation where everybody begins to doubt each other, not trust each other, we have to stick together. And I want to continue that work on your behalf. So thank you. I look forward to the debate. Thank you for being here tonight. And I just want to give a special shout out to my family, my son Henry, who's not here, my partner. Henry got put to bed tonight. I got to say goodnight. But we decided it was best to leave him at home. So thank you.
Good evening. My name is Katie Valenzuela, and I can't really talk about myself without talking about my dad. He was a 2-term Vietnam veteran who earned a Purple Heart, and when I was 13 years old, told me that we don't get to complain about problems unless we're willing to do something to try to fix them. That's what led me to go to UC Davis and get a bachelor's and master's degree in community development, which eventually led me to move to Sacramento in 2009 and do what my dad told me and throw myself into my new home to make things better. Since I've been here, gosh, we've done a lot. Over the last 11 years, I've helped start neighborhood associations. I've helped community groups navigate the city process and the state process to try to make change. We've convened coalitions that are trying to tackle tough problems like environmental justice and food justice. I've helped, most recently, just finished a multi-year process to start the Sacramento Community Land Trust, which is at the cutting edge of strategies we can deploy to preserve affordable housing with minimal public subsidy. So I'm not asking you to believe that I care about doing community work. I'm showing you that through all that I've done over the last 11 years. I love doing this work. So a little over a year ago, when I realized that our council member, Steve Hansen, just seemed more interested in different priorities and what we needed in our community. He was more interested in stadiums and flashy projects and in sidewalks and in bike lanes and in basic safety improvements on our streets and affordable housing and the homeless. I did what my dad taught me to do, and I decided to do something about it. I decided to run. But I didn't just decide to run for myself. I knew I couldn't do it by myself. I decided to run a campaign that's different than any campaign we've really seen in the Sacramento region. I'm proud today to say that as of tonight, we have over 400 individual donors, mostly from within this district. We've had over 100 people come out with us and do phone banking and canvassing and postcard writing, many of them who've never been involved in political campaigns before. Because the fact is, who you vote for, we're just one person. This is about inspiring all of us to work together and giving everybody the skills and the empowerment so that we can work together to do the things that we need to do to make Sacramento a better place. So I'm really excited to be here tonight. I'm excited to answer your questions, and I'm thrilled at the turnout on a Wednesday night. So thank you for being here.
We begin with the issue at the center of really the city, homelessness, the homelessness crisis. Recent polling indicates that for the first time in the state's history, homelessness now ranks as the most important issue for California voters. Sacramento will be building a 100-bed homeless shelter on a state-owned lot under the WX Freeway near Alhambra Boulevard. This site is located just outside of District 4, but sits alongside several residential neighborhoods. The question, do you believe that this is an appropriate place for a shelter? Would you favor locating new homeless shelters in more sparsely populated areas away from parks, schools, and local businesses? If not, why not? Steve.
Thank you, Steve. We have a crisis on our streets. We have a crisis of affordability. And I stepped up right when I got elected because that was what the public demanded. And we created the first position in the city responsible for coordinating the city's approach to homelessness. Now that program has grown. We now have a federal grant for $60+ million called Whole Person Care. We're working with Sacramento Steps Forward, with the county. But we do need services, and we need shelter in particular, especially because shelter is a key step in stabilization. Now, there are a lot of people who don't want homeless shelters. We've seen debates, we've seen arguments. This particular shelter is in District 5, and Councilmember Schneer is a proud champion of this shelter. But I'll tell you, if nobody wants a shelter, nobody will be sheltered. District 4 has stepped up. We opened Capitol Park Hotel. As of last Friday, we had 116 people inside. We'd had over 279 guests so far. Many people navigated into services, into housing, and to other options. But we need to do more, and that's why I wrote an op-ed in the paper last weekend, focusing on ideas like expanding the Mather Community Campus. Many people have asked about a haven for hope. This is an opportunity to scale up an option like that here that can provide intensive mental health services, intensive drug addiction services, and to really do more. That's not just on the city, that's on our county and our state, and we are leveraging resources to make a real difference.
To you, Katie, again, we'll just lay it out for you here. Your opinion on whether or not this state-owned lot on the WX Freeway is an appropriate place for a homeless shelter, and do you favor these homeless shelters going up in sparsely populated areas or in areas where there are populated communities?
Thank you for asking that question. I think the idea that I floated to a lot of you that people seem excited about is using Arco Arena. And the reason that I talk about Arco Arena is not just because it's more isolated, but because it's big enough for us to layer the type of services and programming that we need. It has locker rooms, it has bathrooms, it has showers, and frankly, we help pay for it, and it's just sitting out there empty, so it should be used for something that's more productive. So in 2015, 2012, actually, we knew that 10% of the new housing we need to build is for extremely low-income people. And the reason I'm talking about housing in the context of homeless is the people that are on the streets right now, the way they get off the streets through SSI and disability, by accessing services, they are extremely low income. You can't really get above that threshold. So if we don't have housing for those folks at that income level, services for those folks, they're just going to rotate in and out of shelters, and we're going to pay a lot of money to move people around. And what Sacramento hasn't done in the last 8 years is built more than 2 units that are extremely low income. We've literally built 2 units out of the thousands of units we have built. And so that is the problem we have to tackle. We can talk more about that because I'm getting the cue for time. But I think really we need a strategy that is more than just sheltering. Sheltering is just a piece of that puzzle, and what we're missing in Sacramento is the commitment to the final product at the end of the road.
Can I respond to that?
Absolutely, yes. You got it. 1 minute.
There's no doubt we need more housing. With the state elimination of the redevelopment program, we lost our affordable housing increment, only because the voters passed Measure U in 2018. Now, just last week at City Council, we were able to pass the structure of an affordable housing bond to leverage state and other monies to build those units. We built about 500 units of affordable housing over the last 5-ish years. That's not enough, but it's because it costs so much to subsidize our way out of this problem. In Sacramento County last year, we housed about 2,000 people experiencing homelessness countywide. We are housing them. We're working through innovative programs like VOA, through leasing of buildings through a master lease program to get these folks housed, but we need the wraparound services. And it is very difficult for many people to move directly from the streets into housing. And these triage shelters have proven effective in San Diego. They're working in San Diego because they bring mental health clinicians, they bring public health workers, they bring all the services people need to get their needs met to become healthier.
Yeah, quickly.
Thank
Yeah.
you. So Sacramento had an affordable housing trust fund. In 2015, there was a requirement on the books that developers either had to build the units or they had to pay into a fund so we could build it for them. And in 2015, when they changed that requirement to a developer fee, the city council told us that that fee would generate over $100 million for affordable housing. So the real question is, where is that money? What happened with that? If we did not build affordable housing units that are for the extremely low income, which we only built 2, that is the housing that we know we need. So we've had an affordable housing trust fund. We're not going to buy our way out of this. This is actually something I confront environmental justice a lot. Do you just tell the refinery to reduce emissions, or do you pay them a bunch of money to try to incentivize them to reduce emissions? There's never going to be enough public money to solve this problem. We need to reinstate requirements for developers to mitigate the impact of their development and build the type of housing that we need.
The issue is, if you add more costs, no housing will get built.
Okay, let's
Our costs are set by the Bay Area, and it is extremely expensive to build in our market for that reason.
We will have an opportunity to hit this again, trust me. Okay. This is a question that came from Brittany V, who lives in Land Park. Okay, she wrote into the Land Park Community Association ahead of this forum. Brittany is a parent whose husband coaches at the Land Park Little League field, and he has to check the grounds for needles before the kids play or sit in the dugout. There is a segment of the homeless population that does not want housing and services. Putting aside each of your detailed plans for housing and services, how will you address this segment of the homeless population in a way that also improves the quality of life for residents like Brittany V in District 4? Katie?
That's a great question. I think what I would like to see is us answer that question once we actually ensure that we have all the options available to everybody, because right now there are simply a lot of reasons why somebody would refuse housing, and that's a complex thing. We need to make sure we have all those options available and then address the problem that remains. I do think most of the people that I've talked to on the streets desperately want a place to go. They desperately want a safe camping spot or a home or a unit that they can go into. If there is a remnant left, I want to work with the affordable homeless advocates to figure out what that solution looks like, what that intervention looks like. There are experts in this room, in this region, who know how to work with people who are in that type of extreme situation. And I think only working with those technical experts can we really figure out how to address that, cross that bridge when we get to it.
Steve?
There is no greater institution that I am aware of in this neighborhood than the Land Park Pacific Little League, our 1994 World Champions. And I have to say that those kids don't deserve to have needles in their field. We have done many things, but this is an area, honestly, where the city needs to do more. One of the things we did is we helped create a process for people who are experiencing homelessness through a program called the Downtown Streets Team to come back and help clean up the neighborhood as well. but they get job training skills, they get services, and if you see them and go talk to them, they talk about the power of work that it's had on their lives to give them some dignity, something to do. I was with Jesse, the new team lead for the Broadway team recently, and they are picking up a lot of needles and trash in Broadway. That doesn't get to the root causes. We have to do more to get to the root causes. But Jesse talked about how much he loved being able to do something for other people because he felt so guilty other people were having to help him. And I thought that was really powerful. The other thing, though, is for places like the Land Park Pacific Little League, we are working conscientiously through a variety of means. Outreach Workers, our Navigator program, which goes out and works trying to navigate people in. The same services, though, that we're trying to do, rather than use law enforcement as a way to punish people experiencing homelessness, but sometimes we do need to do that because people do bad things sometimes. But we have a homeless impact team that is trained in implicit bias, mental health, and they're out there working to shift those impacts.
Satisfied with that? Okay. Moving on to you, Steve. We can all agree that we have a moral obligation to treat those experiencing homelessness with compassion and support. I think you guys have both touched on that. What can city leaders do to provide accessible services for the homeless population while creating real incentives for those who wish to find housing and or rehabilitate themselves?
As a child, I experienced homelessness. My mother had abusive boyfriends. We lived in a domestic violence shelter for a while. We slept on other people's couches because we didn't have a place to be. We ate at a soup kitchen. I feel intense passion and compassion about this issue. And that's why when we talk about people experiencing homelessness, we have to bring all pieces of the equation together, coordinate the care, provide the intensive services. And we just, in the end, need to make sure that each of these folks has a different set of needs, that we're not stepping away from a part of the need that they have. And I don't remember the last part of the question.
Well, the idea, I think, is how do you create real incentives for people who may not want necessarily to seek it for themselves?
I think this is where the mayor's plan is really important, that if we build shelters, people have the obligation to take shelter. And ultimately, we can't do much enforcement under the Boise decision around camping or the camps until we have enough shelter beds to satisfy the population on the streets. We are the only city in this region that is doing this work. We need to see the rest of the six-county region and its cities step up to join us. And that's where I think we need the legislature's help as well, to make sure that every city and every county provides the services for their people. More than 80% of the people experiencing homelessness on our streets, they come from this six-county region. But they come to downtown Sacramento, District 4, and to Land Park in order to find the things that they need.
Katie?
And the reason I talk about there's a whole range of reasons why people will refuse shelter is I'm a single woman. And say I had fell on hard times and ended up on the street. There's a lot of reasons why I might not want to go into a shelter. Maybe I found a safe place to go. Maybe I just don't feel comfortable in a big bunk situation with a bunch of people that I don't know. And this is what I mean in terms of the compelling shelter idea is incredibly problematic because it assumes that one size is going to fit all of these large shelter situations, and that's simply not the case. And we need to address the myriad of issues in a holistic way before we start trying to work to compel people and spend valuable police resources that honestly should be going elsewhere to enforce something that is simply the need to sit or sleep when you're tired at the end of the day. That's what I'm talking about when I think what we're missing with our current plan. The city spent a lot of resources joining the Boise lawsuit appeal that happened. I think that's time and energy that we should have been spending trying to actually solve the problem here. And so that's the part of the reason why the shelter approach is so problematic because it is a one-size-fits-all. And yes, I'll just stop there.
You want to respond?
So we heard that there's an idea for a massive homeless shelter at Arco Arena, and then we just heard that it's the opposite, that massive shelters are not the answer. I don't really know what your plan is, but my plan is to open shelters. My plan is to help people get housed. My plan is to help people get off the streets, but if they need encouragement, if they need help, I'm all for that. But we have to try everything possible, and you can't have it both ways. You can't say Arco Arena and the Kings own that and set that up as a thing. The city doesn't own that. There's no debt owed on it. We have no recourse there. We need practical things that we can do, and we have spent more money in the last 4 years on this crisis than we've ever spent before, and we're only beginning to see the fruits of that. We've tried new shelters as pilots, and The railroad shelter we learned a lot from, and Capitol Park is working very well. Would you rather have 116 people outside on the streets or inside shelter with their own toilet, their own shower, and getting the services they need?
That's really fun for that. So it's easy to twist words when we're in a situation like that, and I could talk in great detail about what my thinking is around Arco Arena, but I want to focus more on Capitol Park Hotel. Because I've actually talked to folks who are living there right now. I've heard stories about the locked bathrooms. I've heard stories about no heat and no warm water. I've heard stories about elevators going out. Work at the building right next door to Capitol Park Hotel in the Forum building. I've seen people in the process of getting kicked out of that building. And not to say that I think that people are better off on the street. I'm just saying we should look that up as a model of best practice of what this could look like in this region.
Another subject here, and I think it's a question and a subject that maybe is at the center of this campaign here. Job preparedness. One question posed in two different ways to the two of you. Many people voting in this election see this as a clear choice between the establishment and the anti-establishment. Steve Hansen has been in office 8 years and has an impressive list of supporters and relationships built during that time, while Katie Valenzuela has never held elective office. I'm going to ask this question to you in two different ways. First, Katie, how do you answer questions that residents could be at a disadvantage if you're elected because you don't have the connections to the power centers in Sacramento?
I love that question. So I'm a community organizer. I've been making change at the local and state level without sitting in a position of power for years. The Urban Agriculture Coalition existed because I was a part of that formation. Legalized homemade food at the state level exists because I joined an office to push for that bill to happen at the state level. I've sat on state environmental justice committees. We pushed back on the state climate plan and got 19 workshops around the state of California in the most impacted communities so that their voice could be heard in that strategy. I could go on and on about all of the different things that I've been able to get done in this community and across the state. I have ample experience doing that, and I haven't had the privilege of being a city council member. Imagine what I could do if I actually held some authority in the decisions. Imagine what I could do with a staff. Right? I was just going to finish real quick. I mean, and right now, even if you're impressed by what you're seeing on our campaign, you need to know that I am managing everything on this campaign. We are working entirely volunteer, except for one field-based consultant who is getting a stipend to run back in PDI. So what you're seeing today is just a small sample of what you will see when I'm elected and able to actually move things at a scale that we need in this district.
A lot of support. You see the fires with all of the supporters that you have in this campaign. But how do you answer questions that you're too close to Sacramento leaders to advocate for reforms?
When I first ran, I was an outsider. As the first openly LGBT member of the city council, I still speak my mind when I disagree. And look, it wasn't popular when I took on strong mayor and opposed Kevin Johnson. It wasn't popular when I've done a lot of things because I try to do what is right. And in the end, too, well, Ms. Valenzuela says she's doing this all by herself. Her reports show that she's paying political consultants tens of thousands of dollars to help run this campaign. So I don't know which is true. But I will tell you, every time you show up at that council meeting, you got to figure out how you're going to get 5 votes. You're going to have to figure out how you build a coalition. It was me on the council working with the Urban Ag Coalition that passed that ordinance. I was the lead person on that. And she has a supporter in Larry Carr who opposed that, who opposed the homeless shelter. So I don't know how that adds up. But when we came to pass the flavor ban last year to help protect our kids at McClatchy, who I was hearing were getting Juul devices and all these other things, I led that coalition. It was a very difficult vote, but we got it done. When it came to passing the Tenant Protection Relief Act, 7-2, I got it done. Because when hard things happen, I work with the community, I work with stakeholders, and we forge progress. It's not always easy, it's not always quick, but guess what? We do it, because that's what the community demands. And every time I've been asked to step up, I have stepped up. And that's why my colleagues, that's why the people who support me, whether you're business or labor, law enforcement, or activists, we work together. And that's how you win in this community.
I actually love the fact that I have supporters on this campaign that I don't agree with 100% of the time. Those folks know my position on the issues. They know Larry Carr, we were lobbying him on this. He knows that we disagreed on that issue. But he is supporting me because he knows that I can work with people even when I don't agree with them. He's supporting me because he has seen me bring people together. And so I think the fact that I have supporters that have a wide range of priorities that don't always align with mine is a testament to that method of how I want to try to get things done in the city of Sacramento.
All
But
right.
go ahead.
Well, I was going to move on to this next question here. We're going to focus now on police and crime, okay? And this question will begin with you, Steve. The number of Sacramento police officers is still below its pre-recession high, and the police force is struggling to recruit a sufficient number of qualified applicants to keep up with attrition. For some, a career in law enforcement is not as attractive as it once was. Without a sufficient number of officers, police units are redirected from traffic and lower priority offenses to high priority calls. Here's the question. What is your plan to make a career in law enforcement more attractive and help return the force to its pre-recession levels?
Thanks, Steve. We've worked very hard to build back. We had to lay off officers during the recession. As we've gotten resources, we've added those positions. But we've also done a lot to reshape our department, adding new policies, but also things that will help encourage folks to want to join this department. It takes about 1,000 applicants to get one person through the academy. If you meet some of the most recent graduates, they're impressive people. Women of color, people of color, and our department continues to evolve. I would say too, though, just last week we announced that 0 youth homicides for the first time in a very long time happened in the city last year. Our homicide rate and our violent crime rate continues to be low despite some of the staffing issues we encounter. But yesterday at the city council, I worked with the city manager and the mayor. We added 12 community service officer positions. These are pipeline positions that will help people at the LEX program, at Sac State, or maybe through the McClatchy Law and Public Policy Academy, or one of the other pipeline programs, eventually join our department and help make sure that our department is reflective of the community, its priorities, and ultimately continue to press forward. But it's a difficult thing to recruit right now, and we actually continue to get a lot of interest. So I think Chief Hahn has worked very hard, our deputy chiefs, our recruiters, but we have to do more, and we have the positions and we're just working at it. Those CSOs, by the way, they're going to help on traffic, and we're working on some other ideas to help on traffic as well.
Attracting candidates for the police department.
Yes, I do want to point that I think the reprioritizing of where the police spend their time, we're spending a lot of time with police enforcing against homeless individuals, and I talked to a lot of folks in Moon Park, and I don't know if you saw the map in the SAC today about violent crime rates in this neighborhood. I talked to a lot of folks who have called the police when something intense actually does happen to them and haven't gotten a response, and so we need to start reprioritizing how police spend their time. They shouldn't be spending their time with folks who are camping and not bothering anybody. They should be spending time responding to the calls that actually need them. The other thing that I hear a lot, and I've been at many neighborhood meetings when police captains and others have talked about recruitment. Salary and benefits is a big part of that equation, I get that. But the other part of that equation is perception of the police department. Folks are anxious about the relationship between the police and the community right now, and that's not a good situation for either side of that coin. We need to be taking more steps so that both the police and the community feel confidence that if something goes wrong, that there's going to be a clear and accountable process for how that will be dealt with that's fair, and that results in something that people feel is meaningful and leaves us in a place where we feel like our relationship is better with the police. Those are the sort of things that I hear from kids that I've worked with in high schools in this region. They don't want to be police officers because they don't like the police. And that's not a good situation. We need to start repairing that bond so that we can recruit qualified candidates from the neighborhoods, because you're less likely to be threatened by a kid that you grew up around. You're going to want to go out and help that kid and build a relationship with that family. And that's the sort of recruitment that I'd like to see us start building in this city.
I would just say, in District 4, there's a great amount of pressure for our officers not only to do a perfect job, but we hear from constituents every day, they wish there were more officers. That they want them to be the best trained, the best educated, but they still want more officers, and they have a lot of respect. And I don't think the statistics validate the idea that they're spending all their time on homelessness. We have geographic policing. When there's a violent crime, when there's something else, they all go there. And those calls that you're talking about, camping or other things, those are low priority. And that actually frustrates a lot of the people I know in this audience, because sometimes they want to see different results. But we have a limited resource we're trying to use effectively to reduce crime, to reduce violent crime, and to help ensure that all of our city feels safe and that people want to live here and enjoy their lives.
Next question, starting with you. One of the number one complaints from small businesses in District 4 is crime being committed on an almost daily basis, mostly from transients in the area. This includes broken storefronts, petty thefts, and vandalism. Critics of the federal Boise ruling and California's Prop 47 say police now lack many of the tools that they had used to combat these offenses, including arrests for drug possession and petty thefts of less than $950. So the question, what is your plan to support small businesses and empower police to address these issues?
Prop 47 implementation was really flawed. The premise of the idea that we would de-escalate certain crimes and then the resources we'd save would go into programs, there was a huge delay in those resources actually going out into the programs that would prevent those sort of give people resources so that those crimes are less likely to happen. I don't believe that we can police our way out of a social crisis when it comes to lack of opportunity and the need to address the root cause of these challenges. When we think about housing, when we think about substance abuse, when we think about all of the conditions that may lead somebody to commit one of those crimes, we must look upstream. That is the more cost-effective method of dealing with this than incarcerating somebody. It's more expensive to put somebody in jail than it is to house them. So we need to start thinking through that pipeline, and I get that it's frustrating because the example we have right now of Prop 47 wasn't done well. And I remember sitting in state meetings, and there was like a 1.5 year lag between resources when the thing kicked in and when resources were actually out in the community. And so we felt that brunt end of that reform. But I do think the premise of that is something that's important for us to examine because it is the more cost-effective solution. Someone who has a hit on their record is going to have a harder time getting a job, is going to have a harder time getting housing. And those sort of barriers are harder to overcome when we go after something with a criminal justice hammer than if we try to approach it from a services and resources perspective.
If somebody breaks your window or assaults you, you want something done about it. But essentially right now, because those have been pushed to such low levels, there's not really a punishment. And what's really frustrating for a lot of those small businesses is they see those same people over and over again, and they don't know what to do about it. So I don't blame them for being frustrated, for their trust being frayed, and honestly, law enforcement has very few tools. That is a big problem. We tried to get the county to apply for a Prop 47 grant to bring in $2 million a year for 3 years. They didn't want to do it. Some of the monies that are coming in are coming to the county, but they're being used for other things. The city has our 3 main general fund departments: a parks department, a police department, and a fire department. That's what property taxes and sales taxes cover. We've extended now to build our homelessness investments. We've extended now to invest in youth and front-load equity programs through Measure U. And we're working on housing now. But we can't do it all. We have to find ways to be more effective and more efficient through our partners. But ultimately, this is a matter of whether or not there should be a consequence for doing something wrong. I think there should be. I just don't think the system right now is geared up to help those people. For instance, before, you could get into mental health court because the court could mandate that. You could get into drug court because now those processes aren't happening. People aren't ending up in the places they need help, and they don't seem to want the help if they're not made to take it.
We're going to move on to Measure U. Measure U. Sacramento's voter-approved Measure U sales tax accounts for more or about, depending on the year you're looking at, $100 million a year in city funds to be used for general municipal purposes. Steve, we'll start with you. If elected, how will you make sure Measure U funds are being used to provide more programs and services to underserved parts of District 4?
The original Measure U, the half cent that was approved in 2012, was to restore services. When it came up for renewal in 2018, there was a lot of different needs on the table, and we realized that if we only did the half cent, we wouldn't have the ability to invest in housing and homelessness and equity and those other things. So the voters, in your wisdom, decided to approve Measure U as a full cent. My opponent didn't support Measure U, and in fact said on Monday at the editorial board, we'd be better off without Measure U. But I believe that those positions in the library, in the parks department, in the fire department, in the police department, those are good. But what we've done is we've built upon that through this affordable housing bond we're working on. We're working on a city facilities fund to reinvest in pools and parks like William Land Park, into new bathrooms, into other things that people are asking for. But we're also setting aside a large portion of that for economic equity. And when I talked about youth riding for free on transit, that was Measure U dollars at work. We put money into regional transit to ensure that all people under 18 could ride transit for free. And look what's happening. Now young people have a mobility option they didn't have before. Parents have a mobility option they didn't have before. And those investments are being leveraged. And I think Measure U, without it, the city might be bankrupt because of the failure of CalPERS to get a return on investment, and because we wouldn't have the necessary resources not only to invest in the opportunities and fight these challenges, but we wouldn't have a lot of our own workers.
Using Measure U money in District 4.
Yeah, so Measure U is less than 10% of our budget. And when it was up last summer, or gosh, a year and a half ago summer now, sorry, so and we asked them for accountability for how that money would be used. Because by the time they got to the point where they were putting it on the ballot, they had promised that money 5 times over. And we said, okay, we value affordable housing, we value services, we value all of this, but what's the accountability that we're going to build into this process to ensure that that's where the money actually goes? And by the way, what are we doing with the rest of the money? How do we know that the whole budget is aligning with our values? Because this is just such a small sliver, we are entitled to understand how the rest of the money is aligning with our values beyond that small sliver. But I also do want to point out to the comment that my opponent just raised when I said to the board that we'd be better off without Measure U. And the reason I said that is because the sales tax is an incredibly regressive tax. It hits everybody the same way. And really right now, when you're a young professional like me and you're struggling to pay rent in the central city and you're struggling to afford your bills and you're struggling to get by on transit and deal with parking tickets and enforcement and all of that, that extra sales tax matters to your bill. And without the accountability for the rest of the budget, we saw it just 3 months later. The bill, it was passed and suddenly we were in this food fight over $40 million. And I kept saying, what about the rest of the money? Where's the rest of the money going? What about that developer fee money that was supposed to pay for affordable housing? What about all of the other promises that have been made over the last few years? And I still stand by that position because I think accountability for where our resources go is one of the most important things we can do as a local elected.
Guess what? I agree. And that's why I passed a charter amendment to give our city auditor protection by becoming a charter officer. That was passed by the voters. I passed fiscal policies just last year to constrain our debt, to make sure that we were being smart. But if we don't have those resources, and you want to know where the money's spent, look at the number of people that the city has hired over the last few years. It's going into salary and benefits for our employees who are cleaning up our parks, who are out patrolling our streets, or when you want an ambulance, it's those folks that money is going to. We have a lot of things we've got to fix. We need new fire stations, we need new libraries. It has to come from somewhere, but guess what? We are being extremely responsible. Yes, we're going to fight. That's the nature of the council. People have things they care about. They want to see their aspirations met. But we ultimately came to a unanimous decision because I created a budget framework that helped everybody get what they needed.
I'm really glad to hear that you agree with me now because you didn't a year and a half ago. And I think really when I look at the budget, I don't know if you've actually ever tried to figure out where budget money goes by council district. Have any of you ever asked this question? Like, hey, can you just break out where general fund money goes by council district? They can't. When you look at the way they budget right now, you have to go through this, like these weird, they call them PODs for each department, and you're looking for different things, and sometimes it's a sentence that says, here's $1 million, and it's gonna go to special projects like the riverfront, and that's it. And you're like, oh, okay, but like, what about the riverfront? Is it gonna build housing? Is it gonna go for planning? What is this? You know, our city manager's budget alone has gone from $3 million to $11 million just in the last 5 years. These are questions that we deserve to have answers to before we tax the working people of the city more than we already are taxed.
It's easy to pick these numbers. We are one city. The police officers that might work in one part of the city move from district to district. Firefighters move from district to district. Park workers move from district to district. It's great to say let's divide it by district, but we don't want an us versus them mentality and how we build a city for everyone. And the last thing I'd say is ultimately, we have been responding to the public's demands to invest. Small businesses, that city manager budget includes money for economic development staff to work with small businesses. And we just launched grants last week to help those very same small businesses scale up. We're doing a lot of different things to invest in our economy, and I think it's easy to pick at the budget because nobody really likes a budget. Everybody feels like you have to make really difficult choices. You'd like to do the fun things, but you got to do the necessary things first. And almost all of our budget is spent on the necessary, like CalPERS. CalPERS, because of their deficiencies over the last decade in getting returns, has increased their demands on the city by $66 million. That is money that could be going elsewhere, but we cannot do anything but pay that debt.
I would like to understand how necessary $27 million was for a soccer stadium. Because when you have people who don't have a bathroom, and we have kids being hit in crosswalks on Somerville Road, and we have basic, essential things that I consider necessary to a city not happening, and we're being told there's no money for this. But then magically we can find $40 million to invest in a riverfront or $27 million for the rail yard, this trickle-down economics theory that doesn't benefit working families and benefits millionaire developers. How essential is that?
So first of all, Sutterville and Meade, last night, Talon and Kevin Wong were at the council because we were getting the $100,000 design and preliminary engineering funded. We are working to fund that because it is a priority to me. I have spent numerous hours not only advancing policies like Vision Zero, but blocking and tackling to get the funding for important projects. And so it's easy to pick on MLS and the rail yards where we waited 100 years to redevelop. We had to remediate. But hold on, I don't want to waste my time. The only money that's there is produced by the actual thing that's being built. It's an enhanced infrastructure financing district. And that is money generated by that development to pay for roads, to pay for sewers, to pay for public things. We didn't use the general fund to pay for that. We didn't use any other tax dollars. This is trying to leverage the investment of that project to do more. And it's easy to nitpick the waterfront from the hotel tax, but guess what? It creates jobs for our hotel workers, it creates jobs for our restaurant workers, and I think that's important.
Affordable housing. Affordable housing, that's something immediately. Sacramento is a city on the rise. More people who work in District 4 are choosing to live here rather than in the suburbs. What do you believe is a reasonable balance between affordable and market rate housing in order to meet the future needs of the area?
Thank you. My opponent and I disagree on a certain data point that I found on the state's housing website, which was that we actually have an oversupply of higher income units for people in the rental market right now and an undersupply of the lower income units. And so when we're talking about building housing, we have to build housing for the workers and the people that we know are going to need to be here. And like I said, in 2012, we knew back then that 10% of our units were going to need to be extremely low income. And we had benchmarks for each other income set, and we haven't been making that because we removed the requirements for developers to build mixed income units into their developments. And that's a big deal. That was a big incentive for people. It wasn't perfect. It was far from perfect, but it was something that we had. Right now, you have a developer who can quad divide a parcel and sell each unit for $800,000. And there's nothing that stops them from doing that. They might pay a little bit in developer fees, but that's it. And that's never going to be enough for us to meet the housing mix. And so for me, we need to focus on where the gap is. And the gap is not in market rate. The gap is in rates of housing that workers and minimum wage folks and people on SSI in our city can afford.
When we lost the redevelopment affordable housing money, we lost all of the resources we had to subsidize those units. A subsidized affordable housing unit for extremely low income folks can cost as much as $500,000 each. When we talk about developers subdividing a lot, the developers in our district that are subdividing a parcel like that look like the people in this room. People who've decided they want to contribute, they have an empty lot, or maybe the back half of their lot because they have an alley, and they want to build a unit to help somebody. And maybe that is expensive, but guess what? If we subsidize that, we won't have the money, first of all. But it changes the whole, the ultimate ability to do bigger projects like the warehouse artist lots and those things, and we've focused largely on those. But the cost to do housing is so much. Sacramento is barely able to finance our housing construction that we have right now. In the 1950s, we had twice the population on the grid as we had in the early 90s, and we've slowly rebuilt that. We've slowly rebuilt that. Those empty parcels that sat fallow for 30 years, 40 years. Lavender Courtyard is going to go up on one of those. It's an affordable housing project for LGBT seniors that Rachel Iskow over here championed, and we worked so closely on. Even though neighbors didn't like it because they didn't want those people in our neighborhood, they protested at my movie night with no on Section 8 flyers. We are building that because that is an important part of it. So we're not just doing one thing, we're doing all the things. And we're trying as best we can to achieve all of those goals. But we're not a socialist society yet. We're still a capitalist society, and we need market rate housing to meet that need.
Katie, wanted to respond?
Yeah, you're right. We're never going to have enough public money to build the units, which is why I'm talking about requiring developers to do the right thing for the communities that they're going to need to. But I also think that there's a lot of innovation that we've been trying to get the city to embrace that would reduce that subsidy. So the Sacramento Community Land Trust essentially operates, you pull a parcel out of the market and you just preserve affordability simply because you don't have to subsidize that market price. It never goes back out into the market. It goes to the next person that needs that affordable unit and so on and so forth. And that's just one of many strategies that we've been trying to do. We've been trying to talk about tiny homes in the city for 10 years. We've been trying to talk about modular home development for 10 years. I remember talking to Scott Syfax at Nehemiah, and he's like, if I could just get the city to work with me on a lot, I think I can reduce the cost if I could start experimenting with different ways of building. And that's been a decade that we've been waiting for this. And I'm glad the city's talking about it now, but imagine what we could have done in this city if we'd been bold back then.
So ADUs are small units, garages that are converted, basements that are converted into a separate unit. And I led the charge of our city council to make those by right, to make sure you didn't need to have separate water service, separate trash cans, so that homeowners didn't have to pay fees on those units. Those are the kind of infill units that are really successful. I'm all for a tiny home project. I'm all for modular construction. We've seen modular construction at Aviva. I'm actually going to Factory OS, which is run in Mare Island in the Bay Area, and they're doing this modular housing. It sometimes, though, can be more complicated than building ground up, and we need to do all of these things. There's no one silver bullet on housing, and if you put requirements on market rate developers to build affordable housing in their buildings, they are likely not to build anything. And that's just the sad fact of our economy here in Sacramento. If we were the Bay Area and we had tech billions, we could add all those requirements, but guess what? They're not building as much as they need to there either. For every job they create, they're building almost no housing.
Okay, let's move on to this next topic, transportation. First question, first opportunity to respond will be to you, Steve. And some of you in the audience may not even be aware of some of this, so stick with me here. In the next 2 years, people who live south of Broadway will face major transportation challenges in their commute to and from downtown. Caltrans is proposing to overlap 3 major projects: improvements on I-5 and Highway 50, in conjunction with the repaving of Highway 99. These projects will divert and increase commuter traffic onto greater Land Park neighborhood streets and cause major congestion. The reconstruction of Broadway is scheduled during the same period. You got that? So the question, what is your plan for mitigating the projected impacts on residents?
We're already working with Caltrans leadership on this very issue. Obviously, the state is a partner on a lot of things. We have a great legislative delegation, and with our mayor, I think we're making progress in trying to figure out how those could be sequenced in a way that does not harm the neighborhood. But when it comes to Broadway, it was 2012, neighbors did a walking tour of Broadway with the Urban Land Institute. And what was seen was a lot of neglect, curbs that were not accessible for people with disabilities, the lack of safe crosswalks, no bike lanes, all of the things that people really want to see in that corridor. And so it has taken about 6 years to get the regional funding we need through grants to build out the Broadway project. We've had to go through CEQA, we've had to go through designs, and Broadway can also be sequenced in a way that really dissipates the impacts on the neighborhood. Because the goal is to move the east-west traffic that's just passing through on the Broadway corridor over to WX, to create patio dining experiences, create a walkable neighborhood commercial corridor that will really enhance not just the businesses there, but the neighborhood, and begin to reconnect back towards the north with the central city, what was done when the WX came in. And that big barrier was put up that feels like it separates us all. Now, we have a lot of work to do. These projects are not fun, but ultimately, it's what we have to do to improve the neighborhood, and we've got to work together on it.
Katie?
Part of the problem with transportation planning is that it's spread out across multiple agencies. And so you have a different agency that's planning your bus service, and that's planning things like ballot measures to fund road improvements, and that's planning road improvements, and that's delegating what active transportation projects happen. And it creates a lot of chaos, and it's hard to ensure that in the end it all adds up to something that's workable for a community, both in phase-in of projects and when the project actually becomes, when it's done. One thing that the Bay Area has done that I really want us to do in Sacramento is they started to consolidate those boards, not just to save costs of bureaucracy, because now you have a little less, make it easier for residents to plug in, because I don't have to go to the Sacramento Transit Authority and then go to Regional Transit and then go to SACOG and then go to the city to try to get something done. I can go to one organization and do that. Those sort of efficiencies would really make it easier for us to ensure that these things don't happen and ensure it's easier for us to engage. That shouldn't take a full-time job for us to ensure that these projects make sense for our neighborhoods, and that's really what it takes now if you're trying to implement transportation planning. So that's one of a few different ideas that I'd like to bring into this region when I'm elected.
So I just have to say that makes almost no sense, because SACOG is a 6-county body. They don't do local planning. They don't build our streets. Our public works department do. When people have problems with how a street is getting built, they want the city that they live in and elect people to run roughshod sometimes over the staff about, to make sure that's done right. And if you have some super regional body that is disconnected from people, I think it'll get worse. Besides, RT, the Air District, STA, SACOG, and the city, we all work together. When we do a plan, the city's the lead agency, and we work together with those agencies to coordinate. And that's sometimes why it takes so long, but it usually takes so long because of the lack of resources locally to build out these projects. And some of them are just so aspirational, they take a while to pull all of those resources together.
So I do know what SACOG does, and SACOG does prioritize transportation projects for funding, and so when a project needs state or federal resources, they are involved, just like local governments are involved, just like STA may be involved.
But they're only a funding agency.
Yes, but they are involved in the planning, and that is my point. And I think there is an opportunity here for us to rethink. You all sit on all the same boards. It's the same people. You sit on SACOG, you sit on Regional Transit, you sit on STA, and maybe there's different iterations of what this looks like, but what they did in the Bay when they combined MTC, or talking about combining MTC and ABAG, I think makes a lot of sense. And it should be easier for us to ensure that these things all add up in a way, and it's easier to engage from a community perspective.
I'm an alternate to the SACOG board. I actually haven't been in quite a while because my colleague Rick Jennings goes, and God bless him. People come from the 6-county region. It's a 50-person board. You have Live Oak to El Dorado Hills and beyond on that board. That board has not been a big fan of investing in the city of Sacramento. So I would be very cautious about putting more resources into a board that we don't have more control over. That being said, SACOG has been a good partner in helping us with projects like the Del Rio Trail, and helping us with projects like Broadway, because they gave us that funding. But we still compete regionally for it. We compete against Yolo County, we compete against Placer County, we compete against El Dorado County, and Yuba and Sutter. And so it is probably not the best place for you to have easy access to quick and effective decision making.
You want to respond to that? Let's move on to this next question, and Katie, we'll begin with you. Let's talk about our rivers and beaches. Tiscornia Beach, a popular spot on the lower American River we're all familiar with, where families play and swim, has tested 7.5 times higher than the safety threshold for E. coli due to homeless camps discharging raw sewage into the river. What is your plan to lessen the environmental impact of these camps?
To install bathrooms. It's not rocket science. What goes in must come out. People have to go to the bathroom, and I think until we address the crisis of homelessness in our city, we have to have these facilities available where people are at. It's the only thing that makes sense from a humane perspective, from a dignity perspective, make sure I don't break the law by going in someone's front yard perspective, but it's also from a public health perspective and a managing our natural resources perspective. It just makes sense. And really, when we don't do that, who pays the cost? The homeowners, the businesses, the people who are having to find a place to go to the bathroom on the side of the road. That's real. And so we need to start investing in bathrooms for people so that they can live with dignity and our resources can be protected.
You can clap if you want.
No. We got more questions.
The Lower American River Parkway and the crisis that it finds itself in is extremely serious. The county is the agency that owns the parkway, and they have worked under County Supervisor Phil Cerna, under County Supervisor Kennedy, to add resources to the parkway. Parkway. But in the city, which is our jurisdiction, we are adding right now a bathroom at Chavez Plaza. We're working to fund and build a new ADA accessible bathroom at Roosevelt Park. We're putting in a new bathroom at Southside Park. We're putting in a new restroom facility at Stanford Park. Those are expensive, but we're doing them to help address this. I had a study done. We saw what public bathrooms were when they were open, and we're trying right now to fill the gaps in that. The crisis in the Lower American Parkway can only partially be addressed by a bathroom. The overall crisis is about the lack of shelter, the lack of effective programs to help people experiencing homelessness who need addiction treatment, who need mental health treatment, but also, ultimately, they need more than just what is being talked about tonight. They need a place to live, but they also need an incentive to go there.
I'm really glad the city is finally taking the step of installing bathrooms. And one commitment I would ask my opponent today is to stop removing the temporary porta potties that people are trying to put out to triage the situation right now while we work on those longer term solutions.
The porta potties you're talking about were in Councilmember Harris's district, but I'm okay with collaborating with the community as long as we do it in a way that is effective, respectful, and safe. With porta potties, one of the biggest challenges we've had is they get damaged, a lot of things happen in them, and then ultimately they become a nuisance because of drug activity, prostitution. So if we can do it well, I'm all for it. I've been in favor of an attendant program, having really effective ways to ensure that it's not just a bathroom, but near where those bathrooms were removed, and I know Mr. Marin is here, he's my neighbor, he and Catherine, he's the one suing us for removing those. We got everybody here. But Councilmember Harris, who represents the River District, fought really hard and worked with County Supervisor Cerna to open bathrooms in the River District at a county building that could help meet some of that need. It's not enough, and we have to do more. But I will say, it's not as easy as a snippet. There's not just an easy one-liner that can fix this problem. We all have to be in it together.
I think that the questions here are really posed along the American River Trail in particular. And this. Now. Okay. I'll get this back to you. It's back on? Okay, it's back on. Good teamwork. Okay, so let's keep this question focused on the American River Bike Trail. And this next question is the same area. Many people do not feel safe using the American River Bike Trail and other natural spaces around District 4 for biking, jogging, or swimming. What is your plan, Steve, to make these areas safe for families and those looking to enjoy these public spaces?
I'm an avid cyclist. Many of you know in 2016 I was leaving on a bike ride and fell and broke my leg on my front stairs. It's embarrassing, but I have new bike shoes. So I didn't bike much for a little while because I couldn't walk. But when you go out there, it is extremely distressing. The conditions in the parkway are serious. They need a comprehensive plan. Our assembly member worked with the county and the city to create a conservancy to bring more state money in to help improve the parkway. We are talking right now about adding operations and maintenance resources to the parkway through a potential measure that could be on the November ballot through the Sacramento Transportation Authority. But that's one of the key things with the parkway. 23 miles of parkway, hundreds of acres, and the county has very minimal resources to maintain it. So unless we solve that fundamental problem, we're going to continue just to try to manage our way out of this problem without seeing substantial fixes. I think ultimately, we're going to have to continue to do everything we can in partnership with the county. The city has maintained some pieces of it, but it's very difficult under the current set of situations to make significant change without those resources.
Improving safety along the American River Parkway.
Yeah, I think, so getting back to my Arco Arena answer earlier when I talk about triage, what we need is to designate safe camping places. What we need is to have a place that folks go. Because that's the number one thing. I was just at Boulevard Park the other day, and they talked about moving along a camp that was blocking right of way. And those folks, they asked, Steve, you were there, and they said, well, what do people say when you ask them to move? And they say, well, they usually ask, where do I go? And it's a simple fact that there is no place for people to go who are living outdoors right now that is safe and that they can manage themselves. And so I think that designating safe camping places, safe parking parking places, with bathrooms, with shower access. This is sort of a near-term step. It's not a long-term solution. But right now, it's not a good solution that folks are just trying to find a place to go wherever they can. If we have those designated places, we can manage them a little bit better. We can work with the homeless advocates and make them good spaces while we work on the long-term housing that we desperately need.
I'm not naive enough to think if you just ask people to move, they're just going to move. That's one of the challenges. But with the new Alhambra Next Shelter, that issue in Boulevard Park, we'll actually have a place to help people get to. We've been talking for a while about forcing Cal Expo to let us reopen sheltering options there. For a long time, the county ran a 400-person winter shelter. During the recession, they stopped that, and the Cal Expo board has refused to let us come back. They're now asking for a bailout from the state because they're losing money. That is an opportunity for us to get Cal Expo as a place to do some of that sheltering, and indeed it's one of the places that we're looking at for a 23-acre care campus to ensure that we have these intensive services and we can really help people. Now, just because we build it doesn't mean they will come. We need to figure out how to support people moving out of the parkway and encouraging them, but ultimately the parkway is not a place for human habitation. It's meant for nature and recreation. And so we have to find a way to solve that, but it's going to take the city and the county working together.
So I just want to point out that, part of the justification that was given earlier for why we have so many homeless here is that they're coming here for services. And then at the same time, we're saying that they don't want help. And I want to point this out because I think it's a real gap in our logic here when we think about the homeless. The folks that I talk to do genuinely, they're people, right? You can talk to them, like I'm talking to you right now. And they have ideas of things that they need and places that they'd like to go and ideas that these are folks that we can work with if we try. And if we show up with a cop, they're going to run away. It's pretty simple. If you show up with a mental health worker, they're going to want to talk to you about something. And I think that's the reality of what we're dealing with here is like, I believe that maybe there's a small percentage of folks, my dad had PTSD, that maybe just prefer to be outdoors. And maybe there's that small percentage that will just never get there. But we have so far to go to actually exhaust all of the options that we could be making available to folks. I'd like to see us focus on that so that we can really say that we solved it here because we have the potential. We have over 2,000 parcels that are in public ownership in the city. 69 of those parcels add up to 90 acres that are available potentially for sale. That's in the city auditor's report on surplus land. We have places that folks could be going right now if we wanted to get creative and work with them on a solution.
Which is why I support shelters. Which is why I've supported shelters and the city's lead on it. But I know people want help, but they don't always want to come in to get it. And so that's why we have outreach workers. That's why we do all these other things. But ultimately, if people don't want to come in, we actually don't have any tools right now other than encouragement, asking and asking. There was a guy named J. Vance Stewart. He was one of our downtown navigators. He's since passed, and every year we give out an award in his name. J. Vance told me before he died that there was one gentleman who he had to work with, and he worked with him for years. And after about 20 times of trying to get him housed, he finally came inside. But if you're talking about somebody with a meth psychosis, somebody with a serious mental illness problem, they may not know what's best for them. And right now our laws allow them to die on the streets because, guess what? We can't encourage them to come inside with anything but a carrot. And that sometimes is not the most humane approach. We need to figure out how to humanely help people experiencing these problems come inside, and that is our societal and moral duty.
We're going to move on to trending topics on social media. Trending topics on social media. One question for each of you, and the first one will go to you, Katie. The day after Officer Natalie Corona's death, you responded to those who had posted online about her death and asked them to, quote, find a different photo than the one of Officer Corona waving a Blue Lives Matter flag because in your view, that symbol was created with an inexcusably racist intent. Many residents of District 4 have asked to know your stance on law enforcement and what you meant by that post.
I'm really glad you asked that question. It's been a pretty popular post. I could have pulled that post down before I ran for office, and I didn't. I kept it up because I believe in being honest with people about how I feel about the issues, even if we disagree. For me, Blue Lives Matter is a divisive tool. It's something that makes my brown and black friends feel really nervous because it makes them feel like what we're saying is that their lives don't matter as much. And the reason I posted what I posted, I called Officer Corona's death a tragedy, and I meant it. I was trying to start a conversation that if we really want all lives to matter, we need to start having a conversation about whether or not we believe that her death was just as tragic as Stephon Clark's or Joseph Mann or anybody else who has I don't believe that discounts her sacrifice or the tragedy of her death at all. It's a conversation that we need to have as a community when so many people in our community feel so uneasy around law enforcement, feel so uneasy around these symbols. We can't have that conversation when we're having those symbols in the conversation. And that's what that post was meant to inspire. And it did start a great conversation with my friend who's a Davis council member who didn't even think about the fact that he was using a shield photo with a blue line instead of a black line, which is protocol. And I talked to him about that, and he changed his profile picture. We can't only get there when we talk with each other, and that's something that I'm not anti-police. I've worked successfully with police. I don't think our current situation is working out well for either side of this issue right now. I think accountability is the foundation of a good relationship, and that we still have a long way to go till that's a reality in Sacramento.
It was on a stage like this in June of 2018 where the mayor couldn't be, but as vice mayor, I had to preside over a graduation for a police academy. I didn't know it at the time, but when I shook a hand of a young woman named Natalie Corona, she would shortly thereafter be killed in a tragic murder where she was helping motorists who had broken down. It's hard for me as somebody who a lot of times answers your calls, your distress, help, and I ask people to go out to help you, to say that we can't separate those issues to honor Tara or Natalie, Tara O'Sullivan, who were killed in cold blood. It is okay to separate these issues for a minute. The city has done a lot to move forward through, and I think we've learned a lot. I personally have learned a lot and grown after what happened to Joseph Mann and Stephon Clark. We have deployed tremendous resources on training, on education, on ensuring that our officers are carrying out their duties to the best of their ability. But when Natalie was killed, everybody grieved. When Tara was killed, we grieved. And I don't think it's right to mix those two things in this particular situation. Yes, you don't like the picture, but that was her picture. And I may not want that if I were her, but that was her choice and her family's choice. And as much as some people post things that I don't like, I try not to get engaged in that. But we have to honor both sides, and we have to work together to build those bridges.
I don't disagree with the need to grieve. I grieved over Tara O'Sullivan's death as a survivor of domestic violence myself. That hit real home to realize how close all of us are in those situations to being fatally injured. But I just think that we should also be grieving the lives of people who were lost, who were standing in their grandmother's backyard, or were having a mental health crisis. And I don't think that saying that diminishes my grief for the people who were killed in the line of duty. I think I value those lives the same. And I don't think that's wrong. And I think that we need to have that conversation because we still have a police commission who's supposed to oversee a police department who reports to the police department. That's not oversight. We have so many things we could be doing that could improve the public's confidence in the process that happens when these incidences occur, and that would give the police certainty as well as the community that there would be fair adjudication beyond criminal charges. It's such a small piece of it. When we talk about rebuilding trust, when we talk about what we need to do to help communities feel like these officers are a part of their community and they shouldn't be scared of them, there's a lot of work that we have to do that we could be doing in the city of Sacramento.
Okay, we're going to stick with this trending topics on social media. This one's for you, Steve. Last year, Inside Sacramento published several stories related to your involvement with the fencing and gating of a public access point to the Sacramento River levee in the Little Pocket area. The articles raised questions about whether a survey was conducted to assure that portions of the fence were not built on privately owned land, and whether appropriate public outreach had been conducted. Will you set the record straight regarding this issue? How do you plan to address the access issues that have come to light since the gate was put up by the city?
Can I have more than the 1 minute?
You got 1:30.
So first, I've voted for every plan that calls for the completion of the Sacramento River Trail. I've supported my colleague Rick Jennings in the work in closing gaps in the pocket and helping get funding for those. When we found out that homeless camps were forming on a piece of property that wasn't technically public access, hadn't been approved for ADA, was still a gate there, but a fire was started next to a woman's house, and we were told by the city attorney's office, and then recommendations from the police department and the parks department, that a gate should be there. That's what happened, because that is what the city staff recommended. Now, that raised all these other questions. And what I want to say is that it was only recently, because of these articles, that this trail was prioritized over some of the dangerous intersections. And I've heard from many of you, and I've responded to many of you about why that happened. But if that is something that our constituents want me to tackle, I will work with the homeowners there who own the property to the water line to see how we can come together to fix this. This is something that we don't even have the money to complete the pocket portion of the trail. We have proceeded on eminent domain, but right now, because of the Army Corps project, we may need to redo those proceedings. Just last night I voted, I made the motion for the Two Rivers Trail through East Sac and River Park because my colleague Jeff got recused. I am in favor of trails. I am a cyclist. It is for everyone. But we don't own that land in question. But we can find ways to solve this problem.
I agree. I support opening up the trail. I have heard, I've met with homeowners who live near that trail who are concerned about public maintenance and oversight, and I think these are problems that we can solve. This should be a regional asset. I've walked up there. I've seen how beautiful this trail is. We deserve to have a completed off-road trail in that space, and the process by which this has been managed has been so frustrating to watch. Because all it took was a little bit more transparency, right? Like bringing people to the table, talking about what's going on, figuring out how to tackle where are the barriers, working with friends at Sacramento River Parkway so that we can tackle this and make a plan that makes everybody feel comfortable with how we're going to move forward. And that's something that I fully support doing when I'm elected, because I think it's a gorgeous trail, and it's a travesty that it's not accessible to the public, because my cousin lives in the pocket. He would love to be able to bike into work downtown off the road. I mean, these are all great things that we could have access to if we could just solve these problems together.
Could I add? We, as a neighborhood in Land Park, worked to get funding with the Southland Park Neighborhood Association for the Del Rio Trail, which was a publicly owned piece of land that RT had. We've got that funding now. But just last week, I made a post on social media about the Del Rio Trail. Many of the people who saw that post were concerned that the American River Parkway situation would come to their backyards. And I think that there still is a lot of doubt about the city's ability to manage and maintain. Now that's unique because I think we can create a nonprofit for Adopt a Trail to help maintain and keep with our businesses and neighbors the Del Rio Trail nice. It's narrow. The issues with the Sacramento River Trail in Little Pocket, it's going to take probably $15 to $20 million. We'll have to go through eminent domain of about 40 properties to achieve the property rights to do it. And we have all these other priorities. So it's great for people to tell me what they want, and what I try to do is figure out how to do it. The LPCA supported the Del Rio Trail, now may not support the Del Rio Trail. We want medians on Land Park Boulevard. We want Sutterville fixed. We want Riverside fixed. So what is going to be the priority?
Okay, one last
Just one
comment here.
quick, I was just going to say that price tag sounds really familiar to the money we're giving to the riverfront reimagining, and so maybe that's one of those opportunities for us to think about priorities for the community and how to rank them together.
But this is the epitome of saying something that is not based in fact. The hotel tax that's being used for the riverfront has to be put into buildings. We are limited by voter initiative, which created the tax that has to be used to create convention halls and structures. So if it doesn't have a hotel nexus, if it doesn't have a nexus that meets that test, we can't spend it. So we can't take the waterfront money from Old Sac and just plop it down far away. We can't do that. That's against the law. So it's easy to say, but if it's not legal, we cannot do it.
Last moment to respond.
Yeah, I just think, it's a regional attraction that would attract tourists from other parts of the region and of the state, and so I think there's a lot of ways we could draw that connection, but I use that as an example just because in a $1.2 billion budget, I'm still having trouble tracking down a good portion of where some of these special project fundings go, and so I really think that there's just an opportunity with budget transparency for us to try to identify opportunities for match funding and grants that are out there and all the amazing programs that would love to support an innovative project like this.
Okay, you know what, this is going to end the question and answer portion now of this forum, but we do have time now for your final statements, and 2 minutes allotted to each of you. We'll begin with Katie.
So I want to close tonight by just encouraging you to think about 8 months versus 8 years. Because Steve has said a lot of really well-sounding things tonight, and he's done a lot in the last few months. But really, he's done a lot since I declared that I was going to run against him for this seat. I don't think that that's leadership. I think that it shouldn't take someone running against you to get you to do the right thing. And honestly, I just encourage you to remember, and all the things you've heard in the last few months, and all that I'm sure you'll hear in the next 27 days, that 8 years of inaction have led us to this moment tonight. But I'm not just asking you to vote for me because I don't think Steve's done a great job. I'm asking you to vote for me because I am highly qualified for this position. I am hardworking. I am honest, sometimes to a fault. I may have said things tonight or in the past that you don't like. It would be easy for me to tell you what I know you want me to say. I know what you want me to say, but I'm honest because integrity matters to me, even if it means that we might disagree. And I guarantee you that if you elect me in office, you're going to get so sick of seeing me at your community meetings because I believe that we need to work together to solve these problems. And so if you are ready to do something different in the city of Sacramento, then you need to do something different by voting differently. And elect somebody who's ready to work with you to tackle these issues. And I'm not guaranteeing I'm a silver bullet, but I'm someone new. I've got different ideas. I've got a different way of doing things. And I really do believe that while our district is 3 very distinct and different neighborhoods, we all want to feel heard, and we all want communities that we're proud of. And if we keep that on our horizon, we are going to be able to do amazing things. Thank you.
As a kid, I never thought I would have the privilege of going to college, let alone having a great job like this, because my parents divorced when I was 3. My brother, who had autism, went to live in a group home when I was 7. I didn't have a future, I thought. I've worked really hard, not just on this council, but in life, to get where I am, and I work hard every day. I go from meeting to meeting all day long while trying to respond to emails, phone calls, doing everything I can on 15 boards and commissions that I'm assigned to. It's easy to say you're going to be everywhere to everyone, but now that I also have a family, that's a really difficult thing to promise, right? But in the end, every day I give you my best. I'm not perfect. I can't always respond to every email right away. I can't always fix the problem the way you want it, but I give you my heart, I give you my passion, and I give you my hard work. And it shows. The record of my accomplishments: opening Washington Elementary with the school district as a STEAM program, the Powerhouse Science Center, putting in stop signs in areas where people couldn't get help for 20 years. Martha Damjanovic wanted a half-street closure at 16th and F. And guess what? She and I helped get that done in my first year in office. There are people throughout this room that we've helped on a daily basis. Hard problems and not so hard problems. Opportunities that are big and small. And it is a hard job when you have 100,000 people that come into work, you have the visitors, you have the challenges of crime and homelessness. But guess what? This job is not only a great job, but this is a hard job. And I want you to help us continue this work, because guess what? I built not only the relationships with my colleagues, but also because I believe our work is not done together. We have so much to accomplish to help Sacramento reach its best days. And I hope that you support me. I hope you vote for me. And if you don't, I still want to work with you. Because guess what? That's what makes the city great. Lady Bird Johnson said, "The clash of ideas is the sound of freedom." And that, my friends, is Sacramento.